All right, welcome back. Shortly after I finished the previous video, I realized, wow, the setup is ready. Why don't I go ahead and record this next installment to talk more about the components involved in what I've got going on here. So, in order to do that, let me dismiss this call first. Um, I'm going to get myself out of the way here because I was obscuring the whiteboard in the previous video. So we'll do that. Now I'm going to go over to the iPad. And first up, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Linux host. This is the computer, that machine that sends the streams directly to YouTube. I'm going to pull the whiteboard a bit closer here if I can. So go ahead and write here. Streams to YouTube. Right? So this is also running OBS. You see in the image there, that is responsible for managing the capture of the media and sending it onto YouTube. This is also where I do some video editing and image editing, but that's not important in the context of this video. So streams to YouTube, runs OBS. OBS manages all the scenes, right? The cameras, the audio coming from the microphones, any chroma keying for green screen. Write that here. Right? So that's its responsibility. That's component number one. Moving on, I mentioned I had a MacBook Pro. What does this do for us? Well, the MacBook Pro, this is running OBS as well. And it's running Keynote for Mac OS X and OBS. OBS on the MacBook Pro is sending a stream configured to capture the screen, first of all, but as a byproduct of that, it takes that screen capture and then sends it via the RTMP stream to the Raspberry Pi. And we'll get to the Raspberry Pi in a moment. But before we do that, let's talk about the iPad Pro. So an iPad Pro set up to also run Keynote, but Keynote has this feature where you can use it as a remote control for another Keynote presentation. So in other words, I'm running Keynote on my Mac. I have a presentation open. I launch Keynote on my iPad. I have it configured as a remote Keynote controller for that MacBook Pro. That enables me to do some interesting things. So again, let's get our list here. Keynote for iOS. Gives us that ability to remotely control a presentation on another device running Keynote. So this is also what functions as the whiteboard canvas. So in addition to controlling the presentation, I can actually use the iPad as a whiteboard canvas, and you see that depicted in the image here. When I take the Apple Pencil, tap the screen in the midst of a presentation, it moves into this mode where I can begin annotating on the slide deck. What do we get when we have a blank slide in the slide deck? This is effectively a whiteboard. And so that's what I'm using to do what you see me doing on the screen right now, in fact. Very cool. And finally, the Raspberry Pi. This is running Raspbian. That's the operating system typically found on the Raspberry Pi. They can obviously run other operating systems, but most prominently you will find them running Raspbian. This Raspberry Pi also runs that small web server called Nginx. And in order to do what I'm doing, you actually need to compile Nginx from source, because you need to add the RTMP module to the process in order to do what I'm doing. So we will write RTMP module. So with those components in place and connected to the network, I'm able to deliver what I believe, you can let me know your opinions in the comments, but what I believe is a pretty remarkable capability here in the home office. I'm really impressed, really impressed with what's possible here. And so that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for spending a little bit more time with me, getting more detail about my setup and how I use the tools to deliver decent presentations. Hope you're doing well. Make it a great evening, day, evening, night, depending upon when you're watching this, and you will see me in the next one.